Hey, welcome back everyone. Rob here from Ram Studio Comics. So in today's video, I'm going to explain some of the process here for this Groot artwork. So I did a post and got a couple comments from you guys, which I really appreciate. So I'll just jump right in. So one of the questions was file sizes, like what do you shoot for, what do you use? So I'll give you an example here. It's always specific to the end result of what I'm doing. So for instance, in this one, if you go to dimensions, you see it's this is the pixel width and height, 5000 by 2813 at 600 dpi, which is actually pretty heavy. I also look at the amount of layers it's going to give me based on the device I have. It can vary based on the RAM that you have for whatever iPad Pro or iPad or whatever you're using, but these are subjective to the iPads, obviously. So in this case, I've got a pretty good one, so I'm able to get this amount of layers based upon the size that I'm using. Now, when I initially started the illustration, I actually did something like this. So let me show you how to do this. By the way, I'm making them this size because they fit two needs. One of which is I can make videos, mini videos of these for things like Instagram. I started a TikTok. I don't know if I'll keep doing that, but I was just trying different things, and I've already got people saying, some good, some bad, but whatever. It's just trying different things to get the work out there, get people to, get eyes on it, and then see what people think, get some feedback and have fun with it. So, so basically thinking about the size going into it, that's what this really is. Now, if I go to generate a new one and I say, okay, the size that I need for that is, it's basically 16 by 9, turned upright. So 1920 by 1080 is the size of, like your phone dimensions, basically. So a lot of these apps, that's the ideal dimensions. So that's what I'm starting off there. And you see at that size at 1920 by 1080 that I've got a maximum layers of 319. Well, it's fantastic. But then what I was really after was just getting the initial scale and file size. And then what I look at that point is the way the brushes look. So if I zoom up too much and it starts to get really pixelated, I don't tend to care in the pencil stage. So let me show you with the ink brush here. So there I'm, inking, and actually the opacity's down. So see, I'm inking, right? It looks good from back here, but as I pull tighter, I start to get that pixelation. Now, some people, that might not bother you. You might pull back and say, it looks good there, I'm fine. So you have to, make that judgment call on your own. And are you going to make prints of this? I mean, are you just going to, just leave it on your computer? Or do you want high-res copies to share with your friends, or whatever you're doing? However you're, again, thinking of your end result is the big deal. But all you do at that point, after I generally will do the rough sketch first. So let's get a guy in here. There's some good art for you. I don't know why I gave him thick, he's wearing baggy clothes there. All right, so he's got, give him some hair. All right, so we got a character there, right? We go to resize this. And you want to resize early enough in the illustration where it's not going to hurt the illustration. You go to settings, make sure you click on resample canvas, make sure that this icon is locked and both are in blue along with the icon in the middle. And you have to hit resample before you resize the canvas. If not, it'll resize the canvas and not proportionally resize the art. The other thing is, if you do this, and like I said, I went to something like 5,000, it'll tell you at the top as you're doing it how many layers you got, so keep an eye on that. See, 43 layers, which is plenty for the type of art I create. Hit done. But again, if you don't do that in the right order, it'll resize funky. And if you don't resize early enough in the illustrative process, you'll pay the price with your inconsistency in some of your ink work. See how that's fuzzy? And now if I make a new line, look at the difference there. See, if I get real close, this one's got like a halo of an effect compared to the other one. So it's just paying attention to things like that. Let me get rid of this ugly artwork. I don't mean to scare you like that. And so now that was one of the questions, and that's, there's more that can go into it obviously, but that's really kind of what I look at when I'm doing this is like, what's the end result? Where's it going to go? If it's something for video for like YouTube, it's 9/16 the other way. So it's basically turned like this to fit the player. And then there's other things like, if it's a print or it's a comic, it's 11 by 17. It's not just 11 by 17, it's 11 by 17 with your panel borders, cropped out. So you got to use those templates, and that's where you just import a template right in. Remember, I got one on my Gumroad if you need it. for free download, and I can link in the description box below for any that needs it. And you just basically use that, you import that into here, make sure that you have the appropriate resolution. Generally 11 by 17 at 300 DPI is good. 600 is fantastic. But again, you have to look at that in regards of, what is that going to give you for the amount of layers that you need? Because each time you up that size, yes, you're going to get better resolution, but you're going to lose layer capacity. Okay, and I'll let this play through so that you can see the process unfold. And if I could think of any other tips to give along the way, I will, because that was one of the other questions. Just any general tips and tricks to doing this. One thing I will say is that, and I mentioned this in a lot of videos, but sketch lightly, loosely, and try to feel a sense of flow. I know that seems a bit abstract in thinking, but it really is something you have to kind of do, is just kind of get into a state of flow. I'll tell you what, this sounds a bit silly, but I guess I'll throw it in there. I started playing some peaceful study music, and I'm talking like birds chirping and water water rippling. I don't know if you could hear water ripple, but water flowing. And it kind of made me feel like, hey, it's something I'd be listening to as I drew Groot. I don't know, but really just the peaceful, serene aspect of it, I think is super helpful. I used to be, every time I had to play like rock and metal or different, things that got me kind of pumped, almost like I was getting ready to hit the weights, but I'm gonna draw, right? I start hitting the art, but it just basically, I don't know, at this point it starts to feel, it's been feeling a little bit like the wrong approach. So anyways, I'm just changing as a person, so maybe that's it. But I started playing some peaceful music, and I literally drew on this for 2 hours, didn't look at my phone, didn't stop, and just got it done 2 hours later. So I knew I was kind of in the zone, and it's trying to get into that flow state and stay there. And it's so easy to not do because there's so many distractions, your phone being the biggest. It's fun to kind of check and look at things and check likes and all this crazy stuff. Try to really take a break from that. So that's a tip on that. Also, I realized that drawing this character wasn't as easy as I thought. Now, I was feeling good about it because, like I said, I kind of got in the zone and stayed there. But he's just kind of a tough character. You can probably see it. I'm going to go back here. Before the inks, I started to feel better about right here. I was like, I think that's close enough, the look I want. It's kind of got a little more of a cartoony vibe. But right here, I was really struggling with the proportions. I think I adjusted them a couple times there, so maybe you can't see it as well, but I know what I was feeling. I was just like, man, I don't think this looks like Groot. And maybe it still doesn't. It's all a bit subjective. I'm sure some people are looking at it and go, no, he looks too old, or it doesn't really look like Groot, eyes wrong, whatever. But yeah, it's funny because I'm so used to drawing like the crazier, eerie stuff, and more rendered and just creepy sometimes, that I go to draw something cute and it's harder for me. So that's where I know I have to practice this more, and there's certain aspects of it where I feel like it ties in really well with the grittier, crazier stuff that we like to draw. If you're into that like I am, you like characters like Spawn and Venom and all this stuff. You wouldn't think it would tie in, but it does. Everything has a mixture of cartoon elements, and that's where pieces like this, they might not do as well when I share them, whatever, but at the same time, I feel like I learn a good deal for what I need to, even for that other style that I like to draw that's overly rendered and things like that. But as far as the coloring, I'll tell you one thing that I did do differently here. You can probably see it all through here. And by the way, this is the luminance brushes. And if there's anything that you see here that's giving you, question to ask, make sure to comment below. I'll answer back and try to help you out there, or maybe somebody else that understands this stuff can as well. But basically, they have these luminance brushes inside of Procreate, and they are just fantastic and fun to play with. And that's what all those little stars and little designs are, and the glare off his sides of his face there. But the thing that I did differently here, and I dabble with this, but I typically don't do this every time, is I drew every bit of the color with the ink brush. So let me just jump out of here real quick and show you what I mean. So if I go to the tech pen right there, and if you look at each one of these, by the way, at the very end, I copy the whole thing, and then I play around with some different effects over top of a solid fill. So for instance, before I had this this one right here where it says insert, the one I'm moving, it was, you do a 3-finger swipe down, you do copy all, and then 3-finger swipe down, paste, and it will take everything and put it together on one unified image. And then I usually do touch-ups and final refinements to that. It's also good if you want to play around with some bigger post-processing effects. So for instance, if you want to play around with the overall curves of it, play around with intensities, it works better generally on something like that when you have that final image. And you just keep that image and you toggle it on and off to see each change. Sometimes you can even airbrush or erase areas. So you could say, well, it's kind of like using almost like a clipping mask or something. You could say, well, I like it, but I don't like what it did to his face. Maybe I'll erase that back. And so now by doing that, you quickly bumped up the intensity. I think I might like that better. I think I do. See, just like that. It's just little incremental changes like that. But up until that point, everything else, okay, so here's the luminance effect. You see this is set to normal mode. That's what's really cool about these brushes, is that you wouldn't think they would work that well just on a floating layer set to normal mode. In a lot of softwares, you have to actually paint on the existing layer to get that to work properly. But something about the way they did these brushes right here, luminance, light pen, and I'll pick a similar color here. I think I used a little bit more of a darker blue, but in the hottest point, it's going to be more white. But you can kind of play around with this. Yeah, look how, that is just a cool effect. You want to make some lightsabers? Here you go. This is how you make lightsabers. But look how neat that looks. And again, it's working off that floating layer at normal mode, but introducing that very luminance-like glowing effect. And each time you paint over it, it gets hotter and hotter. In this case, more white. So yeah, pretty neat effect. But every little mark you see in here, I did in the same regard, except for some big soft brush effects around the chin and the lower body. The rest of it, I drew every little highlight in as a shape, where normally I would use a selection. I would normally grab this area, select it, right? And that's probably the better way, honestly. But sometimes I just like drawing it in like this. Not with this luminance brush, but I drew in those shapes that you see on the chest. So I just want to point that out because it's a little bit different. Now, another thing I did with that is I drew it in as a solid shape of a color that I picked. So as I start to get more and more colors on the canvas, I do a lot more holding on the canvas with my finger and selecting the appropriate color, maybe coming over here, bumping it up or down, more saturated, less saturated, whatever. And then I jump back in and I colorize it. But then I also erase back some of that. So this method that I'm talking about is kind of a reversal of the way that you normally color in comics. You would select the area, airbrush the color in, but you're airbrushing very light, big soft brush, right? This way, I'm actually dropping this in. Let me find those layers for it. Right here. I'm dropping those in more solidified with an ink pen, basically. If I do a 2-finger tap, see, I even push back the opacity. So you see I dropped it in more like that. And you see that almost looks like too much. So I pushed back the opacity. But I also had went through there with the soft brush, a big soft airbrush, and just lightly pushed some of it back. Like that. So again, it's playing around with these variables and then seeing how you can, get the subtleties. It's always the subtleties that make things look really cool. That's why in the beginning, we try to draw this stuff. We have these great ideas, but then it all looks like too bold and a little out of place, right? But you so subtly, if that's a word, you subtly nudge things around and add a little, take a little away, be patient with yourself, be calm, and just keep nudging. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's like that. It's really, I'm not saying this couldn't be a lot better. It really could. I almost added some a texture map of just some wood grain lightly faded into the background of his skin, or I could get in here and do some stipple shading. There's all sorts of things, but I was actually, at the end of the day, I was pretty happy with getting it done in the time that I did in a way that I felt looked, pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. It's not fantastic, but for 2 hours, I was pretty content. So let me see if there's anything else I can try to impart on you with this. A lot of times people will ask about the custom brushes. This is all pretty much done with that modified tech pen. I'll make sure my free brush pack for Procreate is in the description box below. You can mess around with those. I'll even include this artwork, maybe the layered file of this artwork in the brush pack, so you can think around with it if you want. So that you can just, go through this and see that, there's me drawing in all those shapes, and then watch, just slowly push them back, and then I add some glares to the eyes at the very end. Oh, I actually captured this little bit at the end, me messing around there. I'll have to edit that out. But so let me see if there's anything else based on the layers I can show you. So what I do for everything here, and I've talked about this before, but I'll just reiterate it and we'll bring this one to a close, is that I basically just draw in primary shapes. You can see his tone there, skin tone there, is a primary shape, and the next few above that are clipping masks that all relate to that image. And then when I start something else, I disable a clipping mask, because if not, it'll just keep on going. And then I start back up. So for instance, there's another flood layer to the eyes, and the clipping masks are locked to that, meaning that I can apply those effects and they won't go outside of that initial flood layer. It's a really effective way to apply your effects. And if you get things kind of, like this, you can take these and you can swipe, you tap the first one, right? You swipe over for the next. See how they're all kind of going together? And you can group those together. You can condense them down. Again, it's a really effective way to work, and then everything that you did to the skin tone of the character there is basically together. So there's, I don't know, clipping masks are awesome. There's a long time I didn't use them, and it's such an ineffective way to work. So clipping mask makes it a lot easier to organize everything and easier to edit. So since every one of these layers above his skin tone is mapped to that in a sense, I can now take this and I can adjust something like, I don't know, the tone of it. And everything just kind of adjusts better. I can add or take away saturation. It all works better because it's all, it's locked into the confinements of that area, and it's all built up on top of it based on blending modes, or in this case, I use almost all normal. I did use an overlay blending mode for the green. Why is that not toggling off? That's weird. Is that a green somewhere else? Oh, you know why? No, it's not. It's this one. That's why. So I was toggling off one that was no longer as visible. I would have to take this one off first, and then I can, see my edited layers. Anyways, so that's it. I mean, there's more to it, but hopefully that gives you some ideas for how you can work through something like this. It's fun and effective. Just remember, lots of little, small adjustments. Try not to do those big, massive adjustments where you're all over the place and then you think it's a bad piece of art. A lot of times it's just kind of incrementally making those changes. Stay calm, have fun with it, stay creative. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. More content on the way very soon. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.